The letter he handed me had my name on it, but it wasn't my handwriting. And the moment I touched it, something inside me whispered, "You were never supposed to forget this." But the stranger who returned it knew exactly what I'd lost. I was locking up the small art shop where I worked when I noticed a man standing just outside the door. Tall and quiet, hands tucked into the pockets of a worn jacket that looked too thin for the December air. His eyes flicked up the moment he saw me, and for a second, I thought he was lost or looking for directions. Instead, he said my name. "Are you Emily Hart?" My stomach tightened. It had been years since anyone had said my full name like that, careful, practiced, like he'd rehearsed it. I nodded slowly, gripping the strap of my bag. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small envelope. Cream-colored. Soft around the edges. Familiar in a way that made my breath hitch. "This is yours," he said. "I think you dropped it a long time ago." I took the letter with a confused smile, but my fingertips froze the moment they touched it. My name was written across the front, but the handwriting wasn't mine. And the postmark was smudged, old, almost rubbed away, like it had traveled through too many hands before reaching me. "I don't understand," I said. "Where did you find this?" The man's expression flickered, hesitation, maybe even regret. "It's a long story," he replied softly. "But you once left it behind, without knowing what it meant. I thought it was finally time it reached you." My heart thudded hard in my chest. Something about his tone, gentle, almost apologetic, sent a strange, heavy warmth through me. Like a memory trying to surface, but stuck just beneath the water. "I haven't lost any letters," I insisted. "I don't even write letters." He looked down, exhaling like he'd expected me to say that. "You did," he murmured. "Once." Before I could ask more, he stepped back, hands raised like he didn't want to frighten me. "Just read it," he said. "Then you'll understand why I had to return it." And then, without waiting for another word, he turned and walked into the cold evening, leaving me standing in the dim glow of the shop sign, holding a letter I didn't know I'd lost, and already fearing what I might find inside it. I didn't open the letter right away. Something about it felt fragile, like a thread that, once pulled, would unravel something I wasn't ready to face. I slipped it into my coat pocket and walked toward the bus stop, trying to shake off the eerie weight the stranger's words had left on me. But the moment I sat down, the envelope seemed to pulse in my pocket, like it wanted my attention. The bus was late, the streetlights humming quietly around me, and for a moment, the whole town felt suspended in a cold, December hush. I finally pulled out the envelope. Up close, it was even older than I realized. The corners were soft, almost velvet-like from time. The ink had faded into a gentle gray, and my name, Emily Hart, looked like it had been written by someone with a steady hand, someone who cared enough to make every letter deliberate. I traced the handwriting with my thumb. Still unfamiliar. Still unsettling. I checked the back. No return address. Just a tiny mark in the corner, almost like a smudge of blue paint. A strange heat crawled up my spine. I was 8 years old the last time blue paint meant anything to me. Back when I spent afternoons in my grandmother's attic, painting small postcards with a neighbor boy named Oliver. He was quiet, always humming some tune he never finished. We sent letters to each other even though we lived 3 doors apart. My first friendships were sealed in envelopes and watercolor stains. But that was decades ago. Too far back for anything to resurface now. Still, my fingers trembled. Why did this envelope feel like that time? Why did it feel like childhood was breathing against my shoulder? The bus finally arrived, cutting through the quiet. I stepped in and took a seat near the window, but the letter remained heavy in my hands. I turned it over again and again, waiting for something, any memory, to leap forward, but nothing did. Only that faint sense of being watched by my own past. And then I noticed something I hadn't seen before. A tiny tear near the top corner. As if someone had opened the letter once, then carefully sealed it again. My heart stuttered. Why would someone open my letter? Why would someone reseal it? And more importantly, why had it taken years, maybe decades, for it to find its way back to me? I pressed the envelope against my chest, suddenly afraid of reading it, and even more afraid of what not reading it might cost me. By the time I reached home, the envelope felt warm from how tightly I'd been holding it. I placed it on my coffee table, turned on the small lamp in the corner, and sank onto the couch. The room felt too quiet. Too expectant. I stared at the letter like it might open itself if I waited long enough. But instead of opening it, I found myself remembering the stranger, the way he had said my name so gently, like he was speaking to a memory, not a person. The way he walked away, as if giving me space was the only kindness he could offer. Who was he? And why did he look at me with relief? I took a slow breath and finally slid my thumb under the flap. The seal broke with a soft, tired sigh, like it had been waiting years to exhale. But before I pulled out the paper inside, something else fell into my lap. A photograph. My breath caught. It was a picture of a little girl sitting on a porch step, paint on her hands, smiling at someone outside the frame. The edges of the photo were worn, the colors faded, but the girl's expression, wide, hopeful, unguarded, hit me like a slow-building ache. Because that little girl was me. I touched the corner of the photograph with two shaking fingers, almost afraid it would crumble. But the more I looked, the stranger the photo felt. Because behind the little girl, behind me, there was the faint outline of a boy sitting on the porch, his face turned away. And splattered on the wooden boards beside him was the same shade of blue paint as the smudge on the envelope. A tremor rippled through me. I didn't remember this moment. This porch. This boy. But the way the camera framed us, the softness of the distance between us, the paint between our hands, it all felt like a memory someone had kept for me because I hadn't kept it for myself. With a shaky breath, I finally pulled the folded letter from the envelope. The paper was delicate, almost translucent in the lamplight. And the handwriting, curved, patient, familiar in a way that made my chest tighten, was definitely not mine. At the top were 4 words written carefully. Emily, please forgive me. My heartbeat quickened. Forgive what? From who? I didn't know whether to read on, or brace myself. But something told me that whatever was written next had waited years to reach me, and now that it had, there was no turning back. My hands felt too small for the letter. Too unsteady. But I unfolded it anyway. The paper crackled softly, like it was waking from a long sleep. The handwriting inside flowed gently across the page, curved in a way that felt familiar, though I couldn't place why. I leaned closer, letting the lamplight warm the words. Emily. I don't know when this will reach you. I don't even know if it ever will. But if it does, then I need you to know the truth. I need you to know why I left. Left? The word hit me like a quiet blow. Who had left? I kept reading. You were 8. You won't remember everything, we were too young, and memories fade when hearts try to protect themselves. But there was a day, the last day we painted together. The day I made a mistake that changed everything. Blue paint. The porch step. The boy with his face turned away. A pressure grew behind my ribs, slow and heavy. The next lines were shakier, like the writer's hand had trembled. You trusted me. And I broke that trust. I never meant to scare you, or make you cry. I thought I was helping. I thought I was doing what the grown-ups wanted. But I was wrong. And when they took me away, I kept thinking, if I ever saw you again, would you look at me with the same fear as that day? My breath caught. Taken away? My childhood felt like a long hallway of dimly lit rooms, some doors shut, some locked. The letter felt like someone was turning a key. My eyes skimmed the bottom of the page, where a final line waited, simple but heavy. If you're reading this, Emily, I hope I didn't ruin your life the way I feared I might. I stared at that sentence until the letters blurred. Ruin my life? What had a child, another 8-year-old, possibly done that could feel so unforgivable? I picked up the photograph again, studying the faint outline of the boy on the porch. His head turned away, shoulders slightly hunched, like he wasn't sure he deserved to be in the picture at all. A strange longing pulled at my chest. The kind you feel when something lost is suddenly close enough to touch. I didn't know him, yet. But a part of me whispered that he had once been important. Someone my memory had buried but my heart clearly hadn't. And now he'd found a way back to me. Through a letter I never knew I lost. And a stranger who knew far more than he told me. I placed the letter down gently, almost afraid that touching it too roughly might erase the words written there. The room felt smaller now, like the walls were quietly listening. I kept staring at the photograph. That faint outline of the boy, the blue paint, the way his shoulders curled inward, as if bracing for something. Whoever he wasn't a stranger. Not really. He belonged to a part of my life I'd forgotten, or maybe avoided without knowing why. But the letter wasn't finished. There was a second page still folded in the envelope. My fingers hesitated before unfolding it. Part of me wanted to wait, to breathe, to steady myself. But another part, the part that had lived years with a faint emptiness I never understood, needed answers. The second page began differently. Not with guilt, not with an apology, but with a memory. Do you remember the day we built the cardboard ship? You said it was going to sail to all the places we were too small to reach. I believed you. I always did. A warmth spread through my chest. The cardboard ship. I blinked, because something about that tugged at the back of my mind. A faint, dusty memory of sitting in a garage, drawing windows on a cardboard box with a thick blue marker. But the memory ended before the picture fully formed. The letter continued. You told me I was your first adventure friend. You didn't know how much I needed those words. My house was loud back then, too loud sometimes. Yours was the only place I felt safe. Safe. That word echoed strangely inside me. I had always thought of my childhood as quiet, simple, ordinary. But the letter painted something else entirely, two kids holding on to each other without really understanding why. I read the next lines slowly. Everything changed the day the adults found us on the porch. You were crying. I thought it was because of what I told you. They thought I hurt you. They never let me explain. My throat tightened. What had he told me? What could an 8-year-old boy have said that made me cry, and made the adults so afraid? The final lines on the page were written with softer strokes, almost tender. I've carried that day for years, Emily. But maybe you carried it too, without knowing it. If this letter ever finds you, please don't be afraid to remember. I lowered the page slowly. Don't be afraid to remember. But remembering felt like walking toward a door I wasn't sure I wanted to open. Still, the stranger who returned the letter had looked at me like he already knew what I'd find behind it. And something told me that this story, my story, was only just beginning to unfold. I set both pages of the letter side by side, reading the words again, slower this time. Every sentence felt like it was brushing dust off an old door inside my mind, one I hadn't opened in decades. But it wasn't enough. I needed to know more. I picked up the envelope one more time, checking inside just in case. And that's when I noticed something tucked into a crease I'd missed earlier, a tiny slip of paper, folded into a narrow rectangle. My pulse jumped. It wasn't part of the original letter. It looked newer. I unfolded it carefully. He didn't write the ending. Meet me when you're ready. Beneath it was an address. A street only 10 minutes from my home. My breath quickened. This wasn't from the boy. This was from the stranger who'd handed me the letter. He wanted me to come find him. But why? To tell me more? To explain the parts the boy hadn't written? To fill in the empty spaces my memory refused to reveal? I set the paper down and leaned back, staring at the ceiling as the questions swirled. A memory, tiny, flickering, rose at the edges of my mind. A porch bathed in afternoon light. The scent of summer paint. A boy sitting beside me, humming softly, dipping his brush into a jar of blue water. I felt something warm and painful in my chest. Like a truth trying to surface. But every time I reached for it, it slipped away. I closed my eyes, trying to focus. What had he told me that day? What had made me cry? Why did adults think he'd hurt me? I pressed the heels of my palms against my eyes, frustrated. My childhood wasn't traumatic, not in the way people think. Not in the way stories get whispered about. I had parents who loved me, a home that was stable, quiet. But sometimes, quiet homes hide things too. A soft knock in my memory, a door creaking open, flashed for a split second, then vanished again. I opened my eyes, heart thudding. Maybe the boy hadn't been the only one misunderstood. Maybe I had misunderstood something too. Outside, the street was dark, the winter night settling deep and heavy. But that little slip of paper, the stranger's invitation, felt like a thread I was meant to follow. Not tonight. Not yet. But soon. I gathered the letter, the pages, the photo, and the slip of paper, placing everything inside a small wooden box I kept on my shelf. A box I hadn't opened in years. A box meant for things too meaningful to lose. As I closed the lid, a small realization trembled through me. Whatever happened on that porch all those years ago, it had never truly let me go. And now, piece by piece, it was finding its way back. I barely slept. All night, I drifted in and out of half-formed memories, paint-stained fingers, humming, a cardboard ship, a boy I couldn't name yet but somehow felt like I should. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the photograph again. Me on the porch step, and the blurred shape of him beside me. By morning, the winter sun crept through my curtains in thin, pale stripes. I sat up slowly, feeling the weight of the box on my shelf even though I wasn't touching it. The stranger's message echoed in my mind. He didn't write the ending. Meet me when you're ready. Ready. Was anyone ever ready for a past they didn't remember? I made coffee, but it went cold untouched. I kept drifting back to the box, to the letter that felt too heavy for its thin paper. Finally, I stood there staring at it, heart thudding in quiet, nervous beats. The address the stranger wrote down wasn't far. A few blocks. A quiet neighborhood I'd driven past but never entered. Before leaving, I unfolded the photograph again. This time, something new caught my eye, a faint shadow near my own shoulder. A hand, maybe. As if the boy had been reaching toward me but pulled back at the last second. A strange ache threaded through my chest. Why did that small gesture feel so important? I slipped the photograph into my coat pocket, then the letter, then the small folded note with the address. The cold morning air stung my cheeks, but it grounded me. It felt like stepping into a story that had waited too long to be told. With each step, the neighborhood grew quieter, older. Bare trees lined the sidewalks, their branches shaking lightly in the winter breeze. When I reached the house, an old brick townhouse with peeling white trim, I felt a sudden wave of hesitation. What if I was wrong to come? What if the stranger had made a mistake? What if this wasn't meant for me at all? But then I saw it. On the small porch, by the railing. A streak of faded blue paint. My breath caught. The same shade as the smudge on the envelope. The same shade from the old photograph. Before I could knock, the door opened. And there he was. The stranger from the shop, standing in the warm light of the hallway, looking at me with quiet relief. Like he'd been waiting, not hours, not days, but years. "Emily," he said softly. "You came." I swallowed hard. "Who wrote the letter?" I asked. He exhaled, slow and heavy. "I'll tell you everything," he said. "But first, I need you to see something." He stepped aside, gesturing for me to enter. And though my heart raced, something inside me, something old, small, and untouched, whispered, "Go." So I did. The air inside the townhouse felt warmer than I expected, soft, lived in, touched by the kind of quiet that only comes from someone who spends a lot of time alone. The stranger closed the door gently behind me, as if loud noises didn't belong in the story we were about to step into. He gestured toward the living room. "Please," he said. "Sit. There's something you should see before I explain anything." I sat on the edge of the couch, palms pressed against my knees. My heart hadn't stopped its nervous beating since the moment I'd walked up his porch steps. The stranger disappeared into another room and returned with a small wooden box, older, darker, worn from years of being opened and closed. He set it on the coffee table in front of me. "This belonged to him," he said softly. "To who?" My voice came out quiet, almost afraid. He met my eyes, and there was a heaviness there, a sadness shaped by time. "Oliver," he answered. The name rippled through me like a wave breaking against stone. Oliver. A forgotten name. A familiar name. A name that felt like childhood knocking softly on my ribs. I exhaled shakily, because hearing it, out loud, from someone else's mouth, stirred something deep inside me. A tiny door creaked open in the back of my mind. "He wrote that letter?" I whispered. The stranger nodded. But his expression tightened, almost as if he was bracing for the part one didn't know yet. "He wrote it years ago," he said. "Long after you two lost contact. Long after that day on the porch." I looked down at the box, afraid to open it. Afraid of what memories might climb out. "What happened that day?" I asked. "Why did he think he ruined my life?" The stranger sat opposite me. His hands clasped together, knuckles pale. "You were kids," he said. "You didn't understand what you saw. And the adults, they misunderstood even more." My pulse jumped. "What did I see?" I pressed. He took a slow breath. "You saw Oliver crying. You'd never seen him cry before. You thought it was because of what he told you. You got scared, and when your parents saw, they assumed he hurt you." He shook his head slowly. "But he didn't. He was just hurting in ways none of you understood." I blinked, confused. "Hurt from what?" He opened the wooden box. Inside were drawings, crumpled, faded. Blue paint stains. A small cardboard window from a ship, carefully cut out. And a photograph of the same porch, from another angle. And tucked beneath them, a short newspaper clipping. My stomach flipped. "Oliver left," the stranger continued, voice gentler now. "Not because he wanted to. But because his home wasn't safe." He paused. "You didn't make him cry, Emily. Life did." My throat tightened painfully. "And you were the last good thing he had before everything changed." The room felt too quiet, too small for the weight settling inside me. I looked at the stranger. "You're telling me this like you knew him." He nodded slowly. "I did," he said. "Better than anyone." A beat of silence stretched between us. "Because I'm his brother." My breath caught. And suddenly, everything shifted. For a moment, I couldn't speak. The room, the wooden box, the faded drawings, the smell of old paper seemed to blur around the edges. All I could see was the stranger's face, and the quiet truth settling behind his eyes. Oliver's brother. I didn't know what I expected when I came here. Answers, maybe. Closure. But not this. Not someone who had lived the same story from the other side. I swallowed, my voice small. What was his name? Your name? He smiled faintly, almost apologetically. Daniel, he said. I didn't expect you to remember me. You were always with Oliver. I was the older one, always watching from the doorway. A soft ache bloomed inside me. I didn't remember him. But something about the way he carried himself, the gentleness, the careful way he moved, made sense. Like a protective shadow that had grown into a man. Daniel lifted one of the drawings from the box, a watercolor of two kids holding paintbrushes. The colors had bled over time, soft and blurry. He kept these, Daniel said. Every single one. Even when we moved. Even when things got hard. The tremor in his voice revealed more than the words did. I leaned forward. What happened to him after that day? I asked softly. Daniel sighed, rubbing the edge of the drawing with his thumb. After your parents thought he hurt you, everything fell apart fast. Our home wasn't stable to begin with. Child services stepped in. They separated us. My breath shook. How old was he? 8, Daniel said. The same age as you. The weight of that settled heavily between us. He blamed himself for everything, Daniel continued. For you crying, for being taken away, for me losing him. He thought he caused all of it. My chest tightened painfully. But he didn't, I whispered. No, Daniel said firmly. He didn't. But kids don't understand that. He thought the grown-up world was punishing him for something he said. Something he told you that day. I felt the air shift. The moment sharpened. The letter, I murmured. He said he told me something that made me cry. Daniel nodded slowly. He did. But not because it was wrong. Because it was honest. I looked at him, heart pounding. What did he tell me? Daniel hesitated, as if weighing whether the truth would hurt me or free me. Then, in a low, steady voice, he said. He told you he wished he could live at your house. That he felt safer there than in his own. My breath caught. And when you cried, Daniel continued, he thought he'd ruined everything. He didn't know you cried because you wanted the same thing for him. A small, broken sound escaped my throat. Because suddenly, like a flash, a memory opened. A porch. A blue jar of paint. A boy whispering, I wish I lived here. And me, bursting into tears because I wished he never had to leave. My hands trembled. Oh, I whispered. I remember. Daniel's eyes softened with relief. He never did, he said quietly. Not fully. That's why he wrote the letter. A hush settled in the room. Thick. Heavy. Tender. I wasn't prepared for the next words Daniel spoke. There's more, Emily, he said. And I think you deserve to know all of it. Daniel reached back into the wooden box, his movements slow, almost reverent. When he lifted out the next item, a thin bundle of folded papers tied with a blue ribbon, I felt my breath catch. He wrote more than one letter, Daniel said softly. He wrote dozens. But he never sent them. My heart tightened. Why not? I whispered. Daniel gave a small, sad smile. Because he thought contacting you would make your life harder. He didn't know if you remembered him, or if you wanted to. The ribbon trembled slightly as Daniel placed the bundle in my hands. The paper felt fragile, like it might crumble if mishandled, but warm, too, like someone had held it often. "He wrote these over the years," Daniel said. "Birthdays. Holidays. Days when he missed you. Days when he felt lost." I swallowed hard as I loosened the ribbon. Inside were letters written in different handwriting styles, some from childhood, messy and hopeful, others from teenage years, others from adulthood, careful and steady. And all addressed to me. "Dear Emily. Hi, Em. I hope you're doing okay." My throat closed around a sudden lump. Where is he now?" I asked, voice barely a whisper. Daniel didn't answer right away. He looked down at his hands, rubbing his thumb across his palm. The silence stretched, gentle, but heavy. "He passed away 2 years ago," Daniel finally said. The words hit like a slow, deep ache, one that didn't crash, but sank. "He always wanted to find you," Daniel added. "But he wasn't sure he deserved to. He kept saying, 'What if she hates me? What if she forgot?'" My vision blurred. The letters in my lap softened through the tears I couldn't stop. "I didn't forget," I whispered. I didn't even know I remembered him, but I didn't forget. Daniel's eyes warmed, relief flickering through them. "That's why I returned the letter," he said. "The one he wrote when he was an adult, the one he sealed and carried everywhere. He wanted you to have it someday. And when I found you by chance, it felt like the moment finally came." I traced the edges of the letters, each one a little piece of someone who had once mattered to me in ways I hadn't understood. What did he want me to know?" I asked. Daniel inhaled slowly, then handed me a small, worn journal, the cover faintly smudged with blue paint. "He wrote one last message," Daniel said. "Not a letter. A memory." He paused. "A memory of you." My fingers tightened around the journal. "What does it say?" I breathed. Daniel met my eyes, steady, gentle, unwavering. "It says," he murmured, "that you were the first place he ever felt safe. And the last person he wished he hadn't lost." The room fell silent. And then, quietly, painfully, I opened the journal. The journal felt alive in my hands. Its pages were yellowed, edges softened from years of turning. Each word written in careful, deliberate handwriting, a rhythm that somehow mirrored the beat of a heart I had almost forgotten existed. I opened to the first page. "Emily. I don't know if you'll ever read this. But I need you to know, every moment we spent together mattered more to me than I could ever say. Every laugh, every paint-stained hand, every time you smiled at me, I carried it all." I felt tears sting my eyes. The pages were filled with memories I barely remembered, yet recognized: the cardboard ship, the afternoons in the attic, the small sketches we made together, the smell of paint in the sunlit garage. Each memory unfolded like a delicate map, guiding me back to a part of myself I didn't know I had lost. One page stopped me cold. "I wanted to tell you the truth that day on the porch. I wanted to tell you that I wished I could stay, that I felt safe with you, that I thought you were the only one who truly understood me. But I didn't. I was scared. I thought you'd hate me. I thought I had ruined everything." My hands shook. The words cut through decades of silence. Not with anger, but with a quiet, aching honesty. I closed my eyes, imagining the little boy he once was, trembling beside me on the porch, and the child I had been, crying because I wished he didn't have to leave. I could finally feel the pieces of that day, the unspoken words, the misunderstandings, the fears that never belonged to either of us, settle into their place. And then I turned the page and read the final lines. "Emily, if you ever find this, know that I was never lost. I was always with you, in the blue paint, in the cardboard ship, in every memory we shared. I just wanted you to remember me, and to remember us. Please, forgive me for my silence, and carry our story forward." The last word trembled on the page. I closed the journal, heart heavy and full at once. I could feel Oliver, not as a lost boy, not as a distant memory, but as a part of my life I had almost forgotten, returning to me through time, through letters, and through the truth he had trusted me to finally see. For the first time in years, I felt complete. I sat there for a long time, the journal cradled in my hands, letting the words sink into me. Each page felt like a whisper from the past, gentle, honest, and aching with the weight of years. The room was quiet, but it wasn't empty. Somehow, I could feel him there, the little boy he had been, the man he had become, and the bond that had never truly broken. Daniel watched me with soft eyes, giving me space to process the flood of memories and emotions. I realized then that his presence wasn't just as Oliver's brother, it was as a guardian of a story that had waited decades to be told. I flipped through the journal again and noticed the small details Oliver had left behind, sketches of us together, tiny notes in the margins, a pressed flower tucked between the pages. Each one a reminder of the joy, the innocence, and the trust we had shared before the world misunderstood. A sudden thought struck me, one I hadn't considered before. Oliver had written all of this not for himself, but for me. Every word was meant to bridge the years, to reconnect a story that had been lost in time. And now that it had returned, I could carry it forward. I felt a strange warmth, a mixture of sadness and gratitude. Sadness for the years we had lost, for the pain he had carried alone, and gratitude for the courage it took to trust me with the truth, even after all that time. Finally, I looked at Daniel. "Thank you," I whispered, voice trembling. "For bringing this back. For helping me find him, and myself." He nodded quietly, a gentle smile on his lips. "He wanted you to have it. He always believed you'd understand, eventually. And now, you do." I closed the journal one last time and felt a sense of peace settle in my chest. The ache from the past didn't disappear entirely, but it softened, replaced by understanding and a quiet connection that spanned decades. For the first time, I realized that some stories, no matter how lost or broken, can find their way back, and when they do, they heal more than just memories. I knew then that I would carry Oliver's words with me forever. I stood up, holding the journal close to my chest. The afternoon sun streamed through the window, soft and golden, casting gentle shadows across the room. For the first time in years, the past felt like a friend, not a weight. Daniel watched me quietly. "It's strange," he said softly, "how something lost for so long can find its way back at just the right moment." I nodded, feeling the truth in his words. The letters, the journal, the photograph, they weren't just remnants of a forgotten past. They were a bridge between two lives, two hearts, and the innocence we had once shared. I thought about Oliver, the boy who trusted me, the man who loved without words, the soul who had waited decades for me to remember. And I smiled, a quiet, bittersweet smile. "Thank you," I whispered again, not just to Daniel, but to Oliver. "For trusting me, for letting me carry your story forward." He gave a small nod, and together we sat in the quiet warmth, two strangers bound by memories and love that transcended time. The letter, the photograph, and the journal would remain with me always, a reminder that sometimes what is lost isn't truly gone, and that the heart remembers far longer than the mind ever could. As I walked home later that evening, the winter air was crisp, the streets calm, and I felt an unexpected lightness in my chest. Life hadn't changed in the grand way, but everything had shifted. The past had returned to me, and with it, a piece I hadn't known I was missing. And maybe that's the magic of letters, of memories, and of those who trust us with their truths. They remind us that love, understanding, and connection can endure, even across years, even across silence. Thank you for joining me on this journey into a story lost and found. If this touched your heart, please like and subscribe for more stories from Aunt's Secret Corner. Every story holds a secret, and I can't wait to share the next one with you.